Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Rain Whalen.
And I'm Maypax, the official tampon of NASCAR.
What would have only made that 10 times better is if Haley threw you a box and you're like,
yeah,
that would have made it so good. Of course, the people listening would have been like, what just happened?
Yeah,
But the people watching,
they for no reason.
Exactly. The people watching, they would have known.
Yeah.
So like, are your parents big advocates of Maypax? Is that why they named you that?
Huge. Yeah. It was
Oh, that's really good. Oh my god, that's so good.
Free Maypax for life. We're naming me Maypax, so that's how it goes.
And that's your whole name, Maypax, the official tampon of NASCAR.
Yeah, it's hyphenated. Yeah.
Which part? Like Maypax,
the official tampon of NASCAR. It's all hyphenated. Yeah.
I guess filing your taxes must be a nightmare then.
It's not easy. But
it's like last name.
Ooh. That's
Oh my god. That's so good.
Thanks.
So good. Well, welcome back, everyone. Today's a kind of a special episode. Both the audio and the video are coming out on Wednesday.
Yep.
Yeah. Yesterday, relative to this recording, Jeremy and I both just had some long days at work, and we're just like, you know what? We're not going to make people wait for a week for this episode, but we also aren't ready for this. So
no, because I would forget so much if we waited a week, and like I'm not gonna watch it again.
yeah.
To watch it again.
Well, and also, like, to your point, rewatching it, I forgot a little tease for the setup. I forgot how brutal this movie was.
For me, I'd forgot because Haley kept asking, like, "Is this a horror movie?" I said, "No, it's just weird. It's quirky. It's Twin Peaks, right?" And then I kept watching it, and I was like, "Oh Jesus, okay." Thank God she's doing something else, because this can get pretty scary. Yeah. So.
Yeah. But yeah. So you know what? So for our audio listeners, Zach, sorry the episode wasn't out yesterday, but hey, the audio is out today, or you can just go watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Also, I'm doing something that Jeremy is very upset with, but I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
I'm wearing glasses.
Unreal. Unreal. They're not literally unreal. They are not real glasses.
Yes, everyone. I was cursed with 20/20 vision. I don't need to wear glasses. But I've always it's a you want what you can't have. I've always wanted glasses.
Yeah.
And I saw these online from Warby Parker. They were doing a collab with the new Spider-Man 2 game. And jokingly, I told my mom about them because they were $95.
It's expensive.
And she hits me up and she goes, "Merry Christmas, they're on your way. They're on the way to you." And I was like, okay.
Unreal.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, my wife said, "Why didn't you get like a blue light filter? That way they served a purpose."
Well, so like, but you have a good point, because I think in an interview, Christopher Reeve said that he just really wanted to be on a wheelchair. And so, like, I think he just, like, willed that into existence, I guess.
Wait, did he really say that?
No, because what you just said is ridiculous. Unbelievable.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
This is,
oh, man.
This is the 8th deadly sin, is wearing fake glasses.
Well, and again, before we get into it, this isn't the first time I've done this. In the 6th grade, I found some at Hot Topic, like really cheaply made ones, and I wore those bitches out. Like
Wow.
they were falling apart. I probably won't wear these all the time, but definitely for the first while, I probably will, because again, these were a gift from my mother.
Yeah,
So
of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I get it. I get it.
Um, well, you want to know one last thing about the glasses? I felt like I felt like John Mulaney from his new stand-up special, because fucking none of my colleagues have said a fucking thing about them. Like
Yeah.
I thought they'd be like, "Oh, you're wearing glasses." No, not they have not even like
Honestly,
batted an eye.
they may have just assumed you've been wearing glasses the whole time, and they're just like, I guess we just don't pay attention. Yeah.
Or that I've always had contacts or something.
It's that cold open in The Office, one of those episodes where it's Stanley's birthday, and they get in that birthday card that mentions his mustache, and they're like, wait, does Stanley have a mustache? And so half of The Office is like, yes, he has a mustache for sure, and the other half is like, I don't know, I don't think he does. And then he comes in and he has one, and they're like, you know, because no one really
it,
just pays attention to Stanley. So maybe that's what.
well, maybe. Well, and my assistant manager said that I should definitely keep it to myself, that they're cosmetic. That they do not serve a purpose.
Yep.
He's like, just keep that to yourself. If they ask, just tell them
It's a
you've
good
always needed
thing.
class.
It's a good thing. Like your staff doesn't listen to this show.
Yeah,
They're
that's true.
they're in the majority.
That's true.
Yeah, they're in good company.
Oh Jesus.
Because I can guarantee you, like, okay, so you know how your your part time as your assistant manager, you know how they don't listen. Like
Uh huh.
they're in a category with Brad Pitt and Barack Obama. They don't listen to us either. You know.
Dude, what if you just said that and now we're gonna get a comment from former President Barack Obama? It's like, I listen every day, and we're just like, well, now we gotta start catering to Obama now.
You bring me so much joy, and I love your friendship.
He's typing the
Yeah. All right,
Oh,
we gotta get this
all right.
fucking thing going.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing we're getting out all the laughs, because as I texted you yesterday, I feel like this one's going to be a long one, because we got a lot of ground to cover, a lot of things to talk about. So in case everyone forgot, this week it was my pick, and today we are doing the 1992 technically psychological horror film from David Lynch, Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me. This is a prequel to the Twin Peaks show that aired in 1991, which honestly was a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, no, it was a huge deal. So, like, when this show was on the air, it was unlike anything else on television. It was completely subversive from anything like it on television. So, even if you wanted to compare it to something, like, it's nothing like that. You know, it's subverting those expectations of what you think a show is going to be, because not only is it like this weird, quirky drama, but it's also this this murder mystery, and it's also this surrealist avant-garde piece, and then it's also part horror, and then it's part soap opera.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was completely different. And the way David Lynch makes anything, it's got his overlay of just his personality in it. And so I remember I was watching this documentary series from PBS called America in Prime Time, and they would go over the history of television up until that, which is probably like 2015, something like that. And David Chase, who created The Sopranos, was talking about it, and he said that it was like watching literal dreams. Like, David Lynch knows how a dream feels, right? And he's putting you in it, right? I mean, because there's some, even in this film, which is a little bit more horror and a little less soap opera, but I mean, the soap opera is still there, those elements.
Yeah.
It's definitely less quirky. Um,
Oh yeah,
and,
for
and
sure.
less camp. Or maybe not less camp. The camp is more dialed more to the thriller horror side. Uh,
It's less humorous than the show.
Definitely. And a lot of that is because there's not a lot of Dale Cooper in it. you know?
Yeah, which we'll get into.
Yeah. But I will start off by saying that watching this movie with Haley next to me, she wasn't watching it. She was playing her Sims, the Sims on her computer. Watching it, I was like, okay, let me put myself in a situation where let's pretend I know nothing about it. Let me put myself in her situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, and I've come to the conclusion that I would have been completely lost. Not
Yeah,
even it wouldn't even come close to understanding what was going on. And it's sort of like, yes, it's a prequel, but the prequel isn't like, I think you said it last week that it can count as a standalone film, which it had to, right? Because it came out theatrically, and so people went to go see this thing who had probably never seen Twin Peaks before.
mm-hmm.
And I got to tell you, that's why the reviews are so bad. um, because we're getting sort of an idea of who these people are, but we've already been
Mm-hmm.
introduced to them. So those of us who watch the show, and so the film isn't reintroducing people to you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. What's funny is I said that, like I mentioned last week, my assistant manager is also a big fan of Twin Peaks. And I told him that I was like, if people went and saw this film and they had no idea of the show, they would be completely lost.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, no, I think people would have seen it. And I was like, a year
People did
after
see
the
it.
show got canceled. Yeah. But I think like his point that like, even if you never watched the show, you probably had heard of it or at some point. But yeah, the movie compared to the show is overtly more Lynch. That's because he didn't have Mark Frost with him on this. Pretty much, I was majority of him. And yeah, and like I mentioned off mic, he definitely made this for the people who have seen the show.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, he had no intention of reintroducing us to Dale Cooper, Laura Palmer, Leland Palmer, Donna Haywood. You
No.
know, he it was almost like he was like, you should know who these people are. I'll give you some new characters, but that's it. And even then, the new characters, we only get two, and one of them, as far as I can tell, because as I also mentioned off mic, as I started rewatching the show in preparation for this episode, only one of these two new characters. No, I'm sorry, three. There's three new characters. I forgot about Philip Jeffries.
How could you?
I know, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But one of them so far was only referenced on the show. Stanley,
Mm-hmm.
Kiefer Sutherland's character.
Yeah.
Because Cooper says in episode 2,
Would you watch today?
yes, when he's taping himself for Diane, he says, "Keep this away from Sam. I want Albert's team on this." It's doing the thing again.
Yeah, it's doing the thing. Yeah, it's because I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so Lynch was like, if you go into this movie, I'm not holding your hand. You should know who these characters are, what's happening. And the other thing that I mentioned to my assistant manager is, if you missed the reveal in the show of who Laura Palmer's killer was, this movie gives you a definitive answer.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, the show was pretty definitive. I was like, yeah, but as soon as that's done, they've moved on from that.
Yeah.
I was like, the movie, for me at least, is the definitive answer.
What's really interesting is that, from my understanding, Lynch originally wanted to keep the killer a secret, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wanted to keep it ambiguous, but I think, and again, from my understanding, he wasn't going to dwell on it all the time, right? It was still going
Mm-mm.
to be sort of more about the town and about the people. And, yes, there will be sprinkles of the Black Lodge and sprinkles of, the ring and all that stuff within the show, and still trying to figure out who killed Laura Palmer. But really, that's going to be sort of like, it's just going to be a part of the town, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we
Yeah.
will come back to every so often, right? Um,
Yeah.
which is fascinating to think about it that way. Is
Yeah.
you wish that they didn't have to, give you the answer. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Because they were, him and Mark Frost were getting a lot of pressure from the executives, but apparently audiences were also like, well, who killed her? We want to know. So they're
well,
giving,
because at that time, I mean, you're thinking about television, that's normal. It's normal to answer the question. Like, Lynch is so far from the average audience viewer or the average audience member or TV viewer, that he's just like, why do you guys care so much? he he himself doesn't understand why setting up a mystery. Why would anyone want it solved? Like, he's like, what are you talking
yeah,
about? Like, which is such a
yeah,
Lynch ideology to have, is that, yeah, I mean, it's a mystery, but it's like, isn't the fun sort of sitting with it? You know?
yeah,
And
yeah.
us average people are like, no.
No. Okay. Well, before we keep going, let me give a brief summary because
Good
I can make
lord.
it brief
Yeah.
of this movie. So Fire Walk with Me is technically two stories in one. The first, because I saw the timestamp, first 26 minutes of the film uh, is the FBI investigating the case of Teresa Banks, which we hear in the pilot of the show. So it's just the FBI investigating that. We're introduced. This is technically and chronologically the first time we were introduced to the character of Dale Cooper, um, whose part, which we'll get into, was drastically cut down for the film because Kyle MacLachlan was worried about getting typecast. But like I said, we'll
Bummer.
get there. Um, and sort of Lynch kind of already building this mystery within the FBI, with the FBI characters that we would see in the show. Cut to a year later in the film, and we are technically reintroduced to Laura Palmer in the last week of her life leading up to the events of the show.
Hmm.
And watching her, I watched a video and now I'm going to put this on present rain because every time I've edited, I keep forgetting to actually credit the videos. So hopefully I credit them. So this isn't a future rain issue. This is a present rain. So hopefully I credit the videos. But I watched this really great video of this person saying how the movie, and I'll continue with the synopsis here in a second. The movie reframes Laura as, instead of this helpless victim, as sort of this target who's wrapped up in a downward spiral,
Mhm.
And honestly, watching Laura's character arc, having the information of the show, then seeing the movie, you can see her character progression.
Mhm.
And also Cheryl Lee is awesome.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Yeah. Anyway, so we see Laura's downward spiral in the last week of her life of being tormented not only mentally but physically by the entity, again, that audience should already know, of Bob, who is possessing her father. We see a lot of the things that are later, well, that were already referenced in the show. We actually get to see them fleshed out in the film. Like James seeing Laura on the last night of her life. Bobby killing a guy, which I didn't think they were, when I watched the show for the first time, I didn't think that we were ever going to get to see that.
Mhm.
Um,
They really do just bring it up once and never again. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah, so I'm shocked that Lynch remembered that and was like, "Oh yeah, like we said he killed a guy, so let's put that in the
Ooh, we need
movie."
to circle back to that. Go ahead, because that's a good point.
Yeah. But anyway, and so the movie again reframes a lot of this stuff that we've already if you'd already seen the show, it reframes a lot of the stuff you've already seen. But the ending is something that honestly really sticks with you. The ending is almost happy. Um for Laura, at least. Because everything that we've seen her go through for the majority of the runtime, I say majority, like the hour and a half runtime that's left in this movie, she is almost at peace in the Black Lodge,
Mm-hmm.
or at least the waiting room of the Black Lodge, the Red Room, and that's Fire Walk with Me, because again we're gonna explore a lot of this because the show, again, like I was saying, the show has already fleshed everything else out. The movie just takes these little bits that are referenced throughout the show and fleshes those out. That
Yeah.
way we get a little bit more cohesive narrative, at least with the character of Laura Palmer.
So let's go ahead and officially start off by saying that
Yeah.
it's funny that you mentioned a cohesive narrative, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because this film, in again, if you don't know this, it's gonna like it's either going to make a lot of sense or it's just gonna blow your mind.
Right.
That this film was supposed to be the first of a trilogy,
Yeah. Yeah, I
and
read that last
so
night.
like Philip Jeffries, okay, that was supposed to be This supposed to be its own thing later, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, where we're setting up all of these dominoes, and he didn't get to knock them down, and so like later in the Return, where Philip Jeffries is that steam pipe thing, um,
Mm-hmm.
and if you listen closely, you can hear him say Julie, right? Because that's
Judy.
really right. Because that's really the only sort of like ending we were gonna get with Philip Jeffries, because like we only see him in this one few
Mm-hmm.
minutes. That was again supposed to be its own storyline later on in the other movies.
Well, and I'm glad we're starting with things like that, like with Philip Jeffries, because Lynch casted a perfect actor, David Bowie, who honestly he stole that whole sequence.
Oh
Like,
yeah, I mean he's
um,
captivating. Yeah, definitely.
and I did read somewhere that when Lynch was starting to plan the return, um, that it was always going to be that Philip was going to have a major role
Mm-hmm.
in the return. But of course, sadly, we lost David, and Lynch did not want to. One, I'm trying to avoid the thumbs up thing.
Sure.
One, uh, use CGI, or two, use archive footage,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why he casted a voice actor to kind of do his own spin on Philip Jeffries' voice,
Mm-hmm.
because he didn't want him to try to recreate what David Bowie had been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which again, um, but anyway, the point I'm making is that yeah, we were introduced to this character played by a fantastic actor, and that's it. Like we get two scenes with him,
And the
and that's it.
sequence is bananas crazy. Like
Yeah.
it's Cooper trying to figure something out with the security cameras, um, and there's I honestly I don't understand it, right? And it's funny, earlier you had mentioned that I said we were going to circle back to is like I can't believe Lynch remembered the thing about Bobby killing someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny you mentioned that, because he's notorious for, on the day, he'll be like, oh, let's try this, right? And it becomes iconic and mysterious that you think it's like some sort of like breadcrumb to follow to something that will somehow make sense. And really, he just thought it was cool that day, right? And
Yeah.
so it's almost like, you know, and so trying to figure out some of David Lynch's films are it are impossible. It's impossible because
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of instances, because again, he'll just think something's cool. People will think that it's super important and connected, and it's not, right?
Yeah.
And so with
Yeah.
that whole camera thing, I don't know what he's doing, right? I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand, again, it might have been fleshed out more later on in the other films, where Philip Jeffries is like this otherworldly presence, or
Mm-hmm.
because he has been to the Black Lodge, he is bringing um, some of that dark energy with him or something, and
Yeah.
and that he's there, but also he never was there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his presence is I think I'm figuring that out. And his presence is somehow um, messing with time in the station.
I'm yeah. I mean,
Couldn't tell you, and we'll never know.
yeah, because I mean, like, we're not going to get too much into it because I think this episode would get way too off
Of
the
course.
rails. But like, I started watching a little bit of the missing pieces,
Oh, okay.
um,
I've not done.
and uh, there's a scene that got cut where Philip kind of shockingly realizes, like, wait, you said it was 1989, because he'd been gone for 2 years. He'd been missing for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of videos I saw are saying like that's when he realized that he time traveled. Because then in the missing pieces, he goes right back to Argentina in 1987 when he disappeared.
Interesting.
And so a lot of people are saying that that's how he was able to figure out time travel and help Cooper in The Return travel back in time to save Laura Palmer. Spoilers for The Return, everyone.
Well, save Laura Palmer? Question mark.
Yeah, question mark. Yeah.
What year is this? Right.
God, dude.
So, but okay. So this film primarily is Laura Palmer's story, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Which I love the idea of David Lynch saying, let's give them the last few days of Laura Palmer. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fantastic idea. And
100%.
also, if you're a huge fan of the show, and it's 92, right? This is basically season 3, right?
Yeah.
Um, because like these characters that you've come to love and know, you're going into the theater, and especially when Dale Cooper says, and God knows when or where he'll strike next, and then it immediately snaps to Twin Peaks, and you hear the music, forget it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how cool is that transition, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, rewatching it Sunday night, I was like, Lynch knew what he was doing. He was like, "Hey, get it? It's from the show I made.
It's the thing you love, right?
Yeah.
Or it's the thing you've never heard of. Which, either way.
Well, and I just want to briefly touch on the music, the actual score of the opening track for the Twin Peaks show. The fact that they used it in the film.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
I know. It's awesome.
It's so good.
Right?
So good.
And, but, okay. So now, if you're a fan of the show, you're expecting some sort of experience.
Mm.
And like we said at the top of the show, like, this isn't it.
Yeah.
This is way darker. This is scarier. This is more mature. This is like a completely different experience. And really what we're watching is this poor girl lose her mind. Okay?
Yeah.
Because she is going through something so unique and so mysterious.
I'm sorry if everyone can hear that.
Yeah.
My dog it's been Otis lately. Otis has been like freaking out at the littlest things. Not Hazel, shockingly.
Shocking.
Yeah.
But so like it's so it's so horrible what she's going through, right? That
Mm-hmm.
eventually will come to understand it's like psychological, physical abuse, um, and sexual abuse,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Oh yeah.
by her father, right? And
Yep.
now we can later get into a debate where we can talk about what's Leland and what's Bob, because I'll tell you right now, I think most of it's Leland. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
but so we're having her deal with this. We're watching how she handles this stress, right?
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, with drugs and men, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, and really just
And
her
women.
right, and really just her psychological break because, like, I think some may watch it and think that this is just typical Twin Peaks over the top, like soap opera acting, but honestly, I think it's just this woman who is just physically about to shatter to pieces, and
I
she
agree.
is always on the edge at all
Mm-hmm.
times, right? Um,
100%.
like there's that scene where the one-armed man is chasing them in the truck, right?
Yeah.
And Laura's, I mean, she's losing her mind, right?
Yeah.
Because at that time she already realizes that it's been her dad, right? Sexually abusing her, but then she's always aware of the physical and mental abuse as well, and
Mm-hmm.
emotional abuse.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I'm glad you want to dedicate time to that because, like I mentioned off mic, how much is Leland, how much is Bob. Um, but yeah, it's like I said at the top of the show. The movie is brutal and unrelenting because with the show being on ABC, I don't think Lynch could get away with showing this kind of stuff.
No.
Um, but now he could, and I think as we've learned with doing Mulholland Drive and Eraserhead, Lynch doesn't go 50%. He goes 100%. So
Yeah.
I think now that he has the medium to go his full 100%, he was going to go for it.
Hmm.
Because yeah, it's so scary. It's
Yeah,
so
parts of it
brutal.
are really scary. There's that character of that kid in the red suit with that white mask. Very scary.
Yeah, the jumping man is because I was like, who is that? Like,
Yeah,
why?
okay, the jumping man,
Yeah, he's called the jumping man, and then there's Mrs. Shalford, and all he's called is her grandson.
which I think
That's it.
is David Lynch's son for real.
I
Um,
think so too. Well, and I learned his daughter wrote the tie-in book of Laura Palmer's Secret Diary.
mm, okay,
So he's really, really keeping it in the family.
yeah, which I almost
um,
listened to in preparation for the show, but I didn't have time.
yeah. Well, and I need to read Mark Frost's books, The Final Dossier and the other one.
The only thing that feels a little different is unfortunately Laura Flynn Boyle's not in the movie. Right?
Yes. I
Oh,
don't know that actor's name.
Moira Kelly. That's her name.
Yes.
Folks
Yeah.
may remember her from Chaplin. She plays Una.
Oh, that's right.
Um,
Yeah. Yep.
and well, she also played the girl that his first wife. She plays both characters. She's also in The
Right.
West
Okay.
Wing. She's in the first season. She's
Yeah.
amazing. I have no complaints about her. I'm just like it. It took me a second to remember that she's supposed to be Laura Flynn Boyle.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Because wasn't like Lara not like available or something like
yeah, it was
that, or
scheduling issues. A lot of people assumed it was because of the graphic content of the film, and really, it was just she had other stuff to do. So, yeah.
now I did hear my assistant manager told me that for the return he was going to bring Lara Fembloya back as Donna, but supposedly she wanted way too much money, and they were like, no.
What a bummer.
Like, okay, like, all right, well, we don't need Donna in this story anyway.
Yeah, we'll just
Which is a little disappointing.
ride around her. I know because she is. at the time, I mean, but she is kind of one, like, the main character for a while. So,
Yeah. Yeah, especially where I'm at, they've already kind of moved the focus to Donna.
mhm,
Uh, I mean, yes, we've got Agent Cooper and Harry in the background trying to solve Laura's murder,
right.
um, but the drama aspect of it is now focused on
Yeah,
Donna.
in
Anyway,
terms of the kids,
it's
it's
Donna.
Donna. Yeah, yeah, she's pretty
Yeah.
much the main character, and so
Um,
that was a weird shift. Also, this time to refocus ourselves with the reason we started this story in the first place, which is Laura Palmer, um, and I love. Okay, so with Laura and her sort of coping with all of this stuff, right?
mhm,
Because again, it's not only her dad, but it's also Bob, and it's also the Black Lodge, and it's also the people associated with the Black Lodge. And
mhm,
they're all sort of after her. And, nothing makes sense to her. She's losing her mind. She's trying to cope with it, but she's also trying to protect the people around her. Um, like, um, like Donna, for instance,
mhm,
when they're at the Roadhouse and Donna has like some of her clothing, um, and Laura freaks out and is super angry at her and is like, "Don't wear stuff." It's not the fact that she's being like controlling of her stuff. She's saying that people are getting too. She's getting too close to me. That if she's too close to me, they might be after her as well, right?
mhm.
It's the same with Jimmy?
James.
James. Shit. It's the same with James, right? She loves James, but she has to push him away because James can't get too close, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and again,
Yeah.
Cheryl Lee, incredible.
Yeah. Cheryl
She's
Lee,
she's amazing.
and what's so interesting is one of the videos I watched, uh, they said how, when Cheryl Lee was first offered the role, Lynch pretty much was like, you're going to be a dead body and we'll have you in for filming some like flashback sequences. But that's about it. But, there was something about her enough for them to create the character of Maddie, for
Mhm.
her to embody Maddie. Uh, but, Cheryl Lee is just amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I was only slightly, like, very, like 1% slightly disappointed we got, like, barely anything with her in the return.
Mhm.
But there's, of course, a reason for that,
Yeah.
which, again, if we talked about the return, we'd be here forever.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, she's just so, like, getting to actually see Laura Palmer fleshed out in this story, seeing the torture she's going through. Cheryl Lee just kills it.
Mhm.
This broken teenager, essentially,
Yeah.
who is doing the best she can with a bad situation, dealing with the fact that her father is being possessed by an evil entity, who's not only uh, you know sexually assaulting her, but mentally abusing her, and it's so fascinating to see how well Cheryl Lee just
And
handles.
she finds out pretty early on in the film that it's her dad, right? That's being possessed.
Mm-hmm.
But she is throughout the film trying to find any excuse to write off what she saw, right? She goes,
Yeah.
it can't be, right? So that's why, if you're watching the film and you're like, she already knows, why is she still like getting in a car with him? Why is she still like hanging out with it? Because she can't believe it and she doesn't want to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why she's just still trying to figure, okay, well, maybe it's not. Let's keep digging. Let's keep asking questions. Let's, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But every time it's just like, damn it, like it's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Especially when it all comes ahead in that scene.
Yeah.
Good God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at that point she knows irrefutably. It's my dad.
Yeah, of course.
Um which, you know, in terms of the show, it's such an interesting concept that her dad was being possessed, um and he's the one who killed her. You know, it is very interesting. But as you kind of hinted at, which I think is a good transition, is how much of it is Leland and how much of it is Bob. Because we already know, if you've seen the show, we've already been established that Bob is evil.
Yeah.
And that he, I'm not going to say the actual word, he sexually assaults and murders people like it's his job, which I guess it is his job. And something about Leland, well, something about Laura is what made him latch on to Leland.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of evidence to point, you know, that maybe Leland has more control than we realize.
I think so, because he seemed to have full faculty of himself when he murdered what's her face. You said her name in the beginning.
Teresa?
Thank you. When he killed Teresa, that was his decision. I don't think that was Bob at all, you know, because he was already like he was already having an affair with her, or an affair. I guess she's just a prostitute, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And when he murdered her, that seemed to be all Leland, right? Because even when we see Leland at that motel and, you know, notice that it was Laura in the room he was going to go in and then back out, like, that's all Leland, right? Like, that's not
Yeah, because
Bob.
why would Bob, yeah,
Right.
unless an argument can be made is that maybe Bob didn't want Laura to know yet.
Maybe, but I don't think that's very important. I think that's all Leland.
Yeah.
And then when he's gonna murder Laura and he's about to, you're right when he's like, you know, don't make me do this, right?
Yeah.
That's all Leland, right?
Yeah.
So I think maybe you could argue that, you know, Bob's possession of Leland, even when he's not physically possessing Leland, that Leland is still corrupted from Bob, right? Or you could argue, which would be pretty interesting, but I don't think it's really Lynch's style to say that all of it's allegory. To say that, you know, that Bob is just an allegory for just evil, right? And that Leland, there is no real Bob, right?
Yeah.
Leland's just an evil person, and Leland is going to sexually, physically, emotionally, you know, abuse Laura, and then Laura or Lynch is sort of manifesting these actions into a physical possession and a physical being, which is Bob. That might be something, but it's not really, I don't think that's Lynch's style. Lynch is more of a, you know, what you see is like, that's what's going on, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like, nothing's metaphorical here, you know?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, I think the reason why it's so hard to tell what is Leland, where does Leland begin and where does Bob end, is Ray Wise is awesome. Like, there were times when I was rewatching the movie, you can see the switch. You can see Bob leave Leland. Like when he, you know, berates Laura at the dinner table for having dirty hands. And then as they're getting ready for bed, you could see his like shoulders start to relax. And I think that's Leland coming back. But Yeah, for me it's hard. Although, and I know we're not really talking about the show, but we keep bringing up the show. My assistant manager did bring up a good theory, and I think it's a little bit more sound. For sure, Leland is the one that kills Maddie.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Bob is possessing him, but it's definitely Leland's decision
Mm-hmm.
because it's almost like Laura's leaving him all over again.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, but yeah, that's one of the coolest twists, honestly, though, of the fact that it's her dad.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
gross,
It
but
is very
it's
gross.
still pretty cool.
Weird. I do
Well,
get what you mean.
yeah. Now, I did want to bring up that I love that we get to see this different version of Bobby in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Because Bobby in the show, I mean, yes, he's everyone's bad boy that we love. Who then turns into a police officer in The Return, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah.
A complete 180 of his character. But you know, in the show, Bobby's this kind of just smart ass asshole. But in the movie, he's more almost subdued, like almost more human.
Maybe a
You know?
little. I think that he's still sort of an asshole because, like, it's him, it's Leland, it's Leo. Like, these guys are really bad people, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they're really just awful, abusive, you know? And, you know, Bobby is abusive. I mean, let's be clear on that.
Yeah.
And so, like, most of the men that we are familiar with in Twin Peaks are, like, not nice. You know?
Except for Big Ed. Big Ed is
Of course.
awesome.
Of course. Big Head's the best. No one's arguing that. All right.
But yeah, no, because it is interesting to watch Bobby. Like you see Bobby in the show,
Mm-hmm.
and you know he's picking fights at the Roadhouse. He's you know threatening to kill James. Of course, in season 2, we're not going to talk about that. But then you know, watching the movie, you know he's not different. Because there are those times where, like you said, we do see Bobby be abusive and his asshole self that we've seen in the show. But there's that scene with him and Laura where he realizes you're only with me because I can provide you drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? And that's fine. It's a I love you more than you love me situation.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, I feel like it almost humanizes Bobby a little bit more.
A little bit. That realization is a big step in his character for sure. In that, you know, really she does only love James, and that she's using these other men for her benefit, to either escape, you know, or to cope, right, with what she's going through, which she doesn't understand.
Yeah.
You know, because then she's like being interacted with from, you know, these people that are, you know, like from the Black Lodge, right? Like that woman and her grandson giving her that picture. And
the man from the other place, the arm, trying to give her the ring in her dream.
Right. Yeah. And that, you know, how could anybody understand any of that? Right. So you would find any source available to try to cope and to try to understand, right, with what's going on. So poor Laura, and no wonder that she thinks that nobody can help her, and that, you know, if you were falling for years and years and years, like you would just be numb, you know, and that not even the angels could save you, right? She truly believes that because she's going through this thing that makes no sense, and that nobody can help.
Oh my God!
Oh geez. Oh, is that a thing?
Yeah, it's a Amber Alert.
I turned mine off.
There we go.
Anyway, um, so so yeah, I mean, there's a reason why she's so pessimistic or nihilistic.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, 100%.
and that only makes the ending so much better.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah. So before we get to the ending, I do want to press pause on Laura's story and talk about the first 30 minutes of the film.
Sure.
With the case of Teresa Banks and meeting Special Agent Chet Desmond and Agent
Sam Stanley.
I was about to say, is his name Sam Stanley?
Yeah, Sam Stanley.
Because we, like I mentioned at the top of the show, we do hear of Sam in the show. Because as I was watching the movie, I was like, I don't think either of these guys are ever referenced in the show. But as I've been rewatching the show, there is a reference to Sam because Cooper tells Diane not to go to Sam to get Albert and his team in on Laura Palmer's case. But as far as I know, I don't think Chet Desmond's ever talked about.
Yeah,
which is a real shame because Chris Isaac crushes that role, man. But anyway, the reason why I want to pivot to that real quick is because this case, it is referenced in the show, but it really kind of sets up how Cooper knew how to handle Laura's case. Because everything that we see with Teresa, and what Chet and Sam go through is almost in a way kind of what Cooper will go through in Twin Peaks.
Yeah, in a way, it was a good reminder and a good refresher of how people talk in this world, right? Because you're right, during that first 20 some odd minutes that they're on that case, you're kind of reminded, like, oh, that's right, like in this Twin Peaks world, like, people talk really different, and the cadence is weird, and the phrasing people use is off, and people are sort of awkward and dreamlike, and then of course once you're in Twin Peaks, now it's just it's a matter of fact that that's what's going on, and that's just how things work. But rewatching it, or watching, I guess it was a rewatch. It had been years since I've seen this movie, but I had forgotten just how David Lynch writes these people. Yeah, it's sort of off-putting in a way, in a lot of ways, especially when they're at that coffee shop, whatever a coffee shop was.
Hap's Diner, I think.
That interaction with the waitress is so weird, And well, even at the sheriff's station at the beginning too, it's so weird and strange and surreal the way that people interact.
Yeah, it definitely is. But I did recently learn that the reason why it is the way it is at Deer Meadow is it's meant to be sort of the antithesis to Twin Peaks.
Got it.
Because, of course, we already know, again, assuming you've seen the show, we already know that the town of Twin Peaks was very welcoming to the FBI. Sheriff Harry Truman was very open to working with Dale, getting whatever resources Dale needs, as where we see with Chet and Sam, the local law enforcement does not want to help them.
Well, as told beautifully by the woman in the red dress. I mean, we already
we already knew that. Like, one of my favorite parts, and it's so funny just because of the line that's written, is when Chet asks about the ring, the sheriff goes, "We got a phone. It's got a little ring on it." Like, so good. But yeah, I think it was Lynch trying to remind us, like, hey, in Twin Peaks, Twin Peaks is its own thing.
Yeah.
Outside of that, the world is not like that.
However,
Maybe.
in contrast, at least from a viewing standpoint, the it's very unwelcoming. You are absolutely correct, and it is the antithesis of Twin Peaks. However, the first 20 some odd minutes gives us Harry Dean Stanton, and so it's all forgiven.
Yeah. Dude, I forgot he was in the movie, and so when I saw his name show up, I was like, wait, so he's in The Return, and he's in this one?
As this character, I believe.
I was about to say, I think he's the same character in The Return, because he's got that Band-Aid on his head.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, Harry, and his character, again, if we haven't, I'm sure everyone knows your love of Harry Dean Stanton, but if we haven't spoken it enough, Harry Dean Stanton's awesome, and just like David Bowie, he steals all the scenes he's in.
Yeah.
Like when they see the sign, do not disturb until before 9 a.m.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it's not 9 a.m. And like they get their badges ready.
And even there's a payoff when Cooper goes, and you don't see the first part of the interaction, but then he's like, sorry to wake you, because he also showed up before 9 a.m.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a great payoff.
But yeah, and it's so back to the first 20 minutes, it's just so interesting that Lynch gives us these new characters, especially because Chet disappears after touching the alcove ring.
Yeah,
he disappears, and he's just gone. I don't. Yeah, because if I'm remembering correctly in The Return, I don't think he's even mentioned at all in The Return.
I mean, I wish I could tell you I know for sure, but I don't.
I don't think he is. Like, I truly don't think he is.
It would have been really cool, but I don't think so. I'm looking.
I don't think so.
Don't think I see. What is this? Okay, no.
Well, and again, like you said at the top of the show, this film was supposed to be the first in a trilogy,
right?
So I bet there was going to be a payoff. Well, in Lynch's terms, a payoff for Chet, but we'll never know.
Right, exactly.
Which again is disappointing, because I think Chris Isaak did such a great job playing this almost kind of, again, and like the anti-Cooper. Yeah, he's nice on occasion, but he kind of gets what he wants, and he's not afraid to fight for it.
Yeah, because there might just be the position he's being put in, right? Because again, he's surrounded by people who don't want him there, and so he's having to force himself in these situations and force people to provide information, right? Cooper didn't have to do that,
Sure. Yeah, so Cooper got to be himself. Like, I got to the episode today where they introduce Albert, and and Harry gives Albert a piece of his mind. It was like, if anyone talks to me like that, they'd be finding their teeth 2 blocks up, and Albert's just kind of like, and Cooper's just standing there with a shit-eating grin, and he just does the whole, it's so, but you're right, yeah, because Chet is in a town where they don't want him there, but he's got to do his job. And also, if you've read the books, you'll know that Chet is a part of, or no, I don't think he is part of the Blue Rose Task Force.
He would have to be, because he knew about the Blue Rose, right?
That's right.
And so I think he is part of the Blue Rose Task Force, which again, don't know. No clue what that means.
Yeah. Mark Frost expand upon it in the book.
Okay.
In the books, I think it has something to do with the case that Cole was on, involving a Blue Rose, and so that became the iconography for this task force.
Got a good word.
Which Philip Jeffries is also part of the Blue Rose Task Force.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um,
And again,
also, sidebar.
would have been expanded on in the next 2 movies, and we never got.
Yeah. Also, I love the fact that Lynch brought back Cole. Cole is my favorite part of the
Yes.
entire Twin Peaks universe.
Yes, agreed.
If anyone didn't know, character of, I don't remember his last name. I just know everyone just calls him Cole. He's the FBI director, kind of. Dale Cooper's boss, played by Lynch himself, and in a very Lynchian way decided to play him with hearing loss. So he's got hearing aids, that he's got the dial cranked all the way down. So he yells at you, and it's the funniest thing in the world. But I love for the return, he pays it off to where Cole can adjust the volume.
Mm-hmm.
And so if he turns it up, he can talk normal, but you have to be very careful because it's
right, because it's too high.
You know.
And that in a way, it's very sweet because he doesn't want to hurt Cole, right? And so it's like that's the reason, like this technology that he is using for hearing, it hurts to turn it up, and so that's why he keeps it all the way down. It's a good payoff, and it's very sweet. I'll tell you who my favorite person in the FBI is, and that's Albert, and played by Miguel Ferrer.
R.I.P.
Oh my God, he was so incredible. And again, an essential part in the return.
I think from what my assistant manager told me, he passed away shortly once they were done with production on the return.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it got to be like the last thing he did. And he's so good in that, and you know, again, we probably would have gotten so much more in these other 2 films. Because, and it's sort of this weird thing that I was thinking about, especially with his character, because his character seems more in touch with reality, some would say. In that when he's yelling at Cooper, you know, for, you know, this sort of whimsical, otherworldly feeling of knowing who the next victim will be, Albert is still sort of like, he's not saying he doesn't believe him. He's saying that he's not being more specific, you know? And so it's, you know, like when you first meet Albert, you think, oh, he's just gonna, of course, because that's what we're used to, and he's being ridiculous, right? But no, it's still a David Lynch world. And so he is more grounded than everyone else, but he's still kind of still floating right above, you know?
100%. Yeah, just this whole like, well, way to go, Cooper. You just described half the girls in America, blonde, in high school, addicted to drugs.
Yeah.
Cool. You know?
Exactly. He's not mad that he's having this feeling, you know, that makes no sense.
He's mad that Coop can't
narrow it down.
You know, it's funny that you want to talk about Albert, because I was literally, before I left for work, I was bringing up the fact that, you know, Albert, and again, we're just going to talk about it. I feel like he has one of the most interesting character arcs across the show, the movie, and the return. Because, you know, when we meet him in the show, he's very stubborn, very hard-headed, very much an asshole, very entitled.
Yeah.
And as the show progresses, he starts to lighten up, especially becoming friends with Harry. Of course, with the movie, we get to see that old school asshole Albert again. But then with Return, he's much softer, a little bit sweeter, and almost more patient, and less entitled. And I don't know. I really like Albert's character arc across all of these. And, you know, if Lynch, which I don't think he will, but if Lynch were to ever bring back Twin Peaks for another movie or something, it'll be very disappointing to not see Albert come back.
I know. It's the same thing I felt about the Log Lady, right? When near the end, when the log lady sort of is reassuring Laura.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love the log lady. So it's
Yeah, she's so good.
and even again, we keep talking about it again because it's hard not to bring in stuff from the other thing because it all sort of interconnects in this weird way where it's sort of like it's all happening at the same time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's how it feels. That's how Lynch makes Twin Peaks feel like it's all happening at the same time. Like in The
Yeah.
Return, when the log lady, unfortunately that actress was very sick, um, and she only had, like that one scene, and she's, wearing, her oxygen tubes. I felt so sad to see her that way, but also so happy to see her again. And so I could only imagine that if you were a big fan of the show and you went to go see this movie and you saw the log lady, you'd be very happy.
Yeah.
That she got this very quick, very meaningful appearance in the
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, and yeah, and you're right. It's hard to talk about this movie without bringing up the original show and The Return because again, you're right that Lynch and Mark Frost both clearly had an outline.
Mm.
Maybe Lynch a little bit more than Mark Frost because Lynch, did the movie without Mark Frost, but they came back together for The Return.
Do you know why Mark Frost didn't have anything to do with the film?
I tried to find something. I even asked my assistant manager. I was like, "Dude, do you know why Mark Frost wasn't involved in the film?" And he was like, he didn't even know." Um, I, I think maybe it was because I don't know. I'm not even going to try to speculate.
Sure, yeah. I mean, because we even joked off mic that this felt more Lynch because Mark Frost wasn't there to be like, "Hey, man, you got to reel it back a bit."
Hey, dial down the surrealism, bro. We have a story to tell here.
The normies aren't going to get this.
Well, I mean, we joke, but it's true because
It is true.
when you watch the show, because again, like I said, I am rewatching the show. Yes, the show has some surrealist, definitely you can tell it's Lynch, but it's more not cohesive necessarily. It's more focused. It's dialed in. Yes, it's surreal, but the characters know their motivations. The characters know what they're doing.
Speaking of
So
the
if we were to
show,
look at,
I meant to
yes,
write this down. Oh my God, what was her name? Stop. Hold on. Sarah. When Sarah Palmer is hallucinating the horse, wasn't that in the show? Am I remembering that correctly?
yes,
Okay.
yes, I think
Because I distinctly remember seeing that before, and it wasn't in the movie. I remember thinking like that was in the show before.
I want to say Maddie sees the horse right before Leland kills her.
Okay, cool. We're good to go then.
But of course, that's not till season 2.
And also like the significance of the horse, who knows? Guaranteed, that's one of the things that, like, David Lynch was like, it'd be cool if we got a horse in here.
Wouldn't it be cool if right before this character dies, she saw a white horse?
Which makes
Mark Frost was
sense because she sees the horse right before Laura dies, I think. If I'm remembering that correctly. It's been a few days.
Right before she's sexually assaulted.
Thank you.
Because that's when Leland or Bob, probably
That's
Leland.
right. That's right, because
drugs her.
Leland drugs her. That's right. You're absolutely right. Man, it's been a few days.
But yeah, so maybe it's Lynch's way of symbolizing something terrible is about to happen. You see a white horse. Who knows?
You're right. Because that's what Death is writing in Revelations. That's where that comes from.
Okay.
Yeah. We even talked about it a little bit in Come and See, because that's where that comes from. Come and see, and I saw, behold, a white horse, and the man who sat upon him was Death, and hell followed with him. So that would make sense that it's a white horse that they're saying.
Yeah.
Boom. Just nailed it right there.
What if? I mean, that'd be great if he did. But what if Lynch listened to this and he is like, "No, it's just
No.
I thought it'd be cool." Like White Horse. There we go. And that's in all the behind the scenes stuff I've watched of him. That's probably exactly how he did it. No.
Who cares how fucking long a take lasts? Oh man, he's the best.
Also, sidebar. Speaking of Lynch, I didn't realize he was in Spielberg's movie The Fabelmans playing John Ford, and that makes me want to watch that movie even more now. Like I wanted to see it because I love the cast list. I love Paul Dano, but then hearing that David Lynch was playing John Ford, I was like, oh, now I have to see it.
Yeah.
I
know Lynch is just the best. But
now,
go
oh no, I was just gonna say, back to the point. Just yeah, the movie is very much Lynch without Mark Frost reeling him in.
Yeah. Because again, we get to be a little more explicit, like with the drugs, the language, and the nudity, right? I mean, that's all, that's cranked to 11 pretty much. In this compared to the show, of course. But speaking of the White Horse, I guess we can start talking about the ending because, like you said at the top, the ending is so different than how you'd expect because we think of the Black Lodge, or at least the waiting room, we think of it as not the best place to be. Okay? We think of it as the breeding ground for this evil, especially the evil that's tormenting Laura. Yet, when Laura gets there, and somehow greeted by Cooper, even though, which is amazing to think that this is how David Lynch's mind works and how time in the Black Lodge works, because technically Laura was there first, right?
Yeah.
And so it's almost like, time works differently in the Black Lodge. Because she's greeted by Cooper, and Cooper is almost comforting her as she sees the angel, right, who has come to help, right, who has come to save her. And I believe the angel is also played by Cheryl Lee.
I'll need to double check that.
Yeah, we'll need to double check that. I think that's correct, but I might be wrong. And then we get this sort of her crying, yet overcome with comfort and overcome with this joy of being saved, or overcome with the sense of relief that she is out of the situation she was in, right? Even though the situation she is in isn't much better, because she is now stuck there like Cooper is.
It was not Cheryl Lee. I found a picture of an on the set photo of Cheryl Lee and that actor.
Oh, okay, cool. So, okay, that's fine. Missed opportunity. I think that would have been cool. Like it would have been any more confusing. But, and what I love about Lynch's style is that he can take something pretty lo-fi or pretty low budget or low scale of just the flashing the light at her, right? And he does this throughout the show and throughout the movie, where it's sort of this, low tech effects, yet within the tone of the show, it makes sense. Like, you're not sitting there thinking like, is he just like flickering a flashlight at her?
Yeah.
You're not thinking that. You're thinking like, okay, this makes sense in this world of the surrealist David Lynch space that we're in. And I love that we have that light flashing on her. And again, it's that it almost mimics the static of the television in the very beginning of the film, where we get the title sequence before Leland, smashes the TV. And again, you're overwhelmed by, that feeling of relief and the catharsis of her being out of the situation on Earth, and now Earth, technically the Black Lodge is still on Earth, I guess.
Yeah.
And being comforted by Cooper again, which is comforting yet strange because it does make sense in the context of time and in order of how events happen in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think the whole thing with Cooper being there was just a way, I guess, to maybe have the through line of the fact that, like, she's going to help Cooper solve her own murder later on the
Well, I have
show.
no problem with it. Again, I have no problem with Cooper being there. I actually kind of like it because
Right.
it gives us, this otherworldly feeling of time not being linear within the lodge, or at least the way.
Yeah. But yeah, no, but I also agree with what you're saying, that we know that she's, for the time being at least, she's safe.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Arm and Mike got their I'm gonna try to do it. I was even like saying the word in my head. Their Garbonzia, their pain and sorrow, um, by preventing Bob from possessing Laura.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the movie sort of has a cathartic, happy ending, at least for Laura,
Mm-hmm.
because she's out of being tormented now. Granted, yeah, the Black Lodge is not, as we learned in the show, not the place you want to be.
No.
But at least while she's in the waiting room, she's safe.
Mm-hmm.
And again, yeah, I'm not upset with Cooper being there either. I think
No.
Cooper.
No.
I mean, Cooper's the best.
I mean, I like that Cooper's there. I feel
Yeah,
better that Cooper's there.
yeah.
It's just the way
Um,
Lynch, put it together. It's sort of like, once you think about it for a second, you're like, but I don't understand. And
yeah,
it's kind of a fun place to be. I don't understand with Lynch, and especially in relation with the lodge. God knows, you know.
absolutely, yeah. But yeah, but so here's my only thing
Okay.
with the movie. And we've kind of danced around it a little bit, is that even though, yes, the movie gives us questions to the show,
Mm-hmm.
but the movie still leaves us with other questions. Like, I found one whole video all about the Owl Cave ring,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like, what is the significance of this ring?
Mm-hmm.
And is it evil? Is it good? And the video I found pretty much says that the ring is neither good nor evil. It depends on the intent.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, so why were they so hell-bent to give it to Laura then? But I think it's because when Laura puts on the ring at the end of the movie, it prevents Bob from possessing her.
Yeah, it also seems to be a key because at the series-ish finale in season 2, when Cooper's about to get the ring from the Arm, the ring disappears, and that means he's stuck.
Mm-hmm.
That means he is now stuck in the Black Lodge, and his doppelganger, Bob, is um now in Twin Peaks.
You mean
Uh,
Mr. C?
yeah, Mr. C. Uh, at the time, though, you're like, it's Bob, right? Because that's what you see in the mirror. Is when Cooper, or the doppelganger, smashes his face into the mirror. It's Bob on the other side. But yeah, you think it's like some sort of key, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, and then the return reframes the ring as sort of a key, because they're trying to, the whole series, they're trying to get Mr. C to put on the ring.
mm-hmm.
And when Cooper finally is able to do that at the end of the show, Mr. C returns to the Black Lodge.
Yeah.
So it's So there's still a lot of questions, and as we've discussed in Eraserhead and Mulholland Drive, Lynch isn't going to give us those answers.
He's so uninterested. He doesn't understand why you care so much. You know?
Yeah, and like I've told you, like when I was watching The Return, I'm like, like I don't want to know the answers, but just give me a little nugget, and I'll figure it out on my own. But Lynch isn't even going to do that.
If there's anything to figure out.
Yeah, that's true.
Sometimes things just are. And you just have to just let it happen. And you have to just let it go and just understand that, there's nothing to figure out. The point is just that it is.
Yeah.
And who knows what the intention was here, because again, we didn't get the trilogy because the film did so poorly.
And there's, an hour and 30 minutes that got cut out and put into the missing pieces. So, but yeah. Well, Jeremy, with that, are you ready to wrap up?
Yeah.
To be honest, this wasn't as long as I thought it was going to be. I thought for sure this episode was going to be a little bit longer, just because, again, we have so much lore to cover.
It's a lot of lore.
Yeah, a lot of lore.
Nailed it.
I have begged Ashley to start watching the show with me, and now that because I really wanted her to watch the movie with me, but I told her, I was like, you're not going to get half of this stuff. It's going to give away a lot of answers. But thankfully she didn't watch the movie, so now we can watch the show the correct way.
I don't think you could promise Haley a brand new, fully furnished house. She would still not watch this show with me. There's no way. She would just periodically look over at the TV. She goes, no. Just keep doing what I'm doing. Yeah. Not happening.
Yeah, I told Ashley, I was like, please, I want you to watch this with me. I was like, it's weird. I was like, but it's so good. It's so good. I just recently rewatched Kyle MacLachlan's GQ interview, and obviously, of course, he talked about Twin Peaks.
Obviously.
And he he loves the character of Dale so much, which is interesting because, like I said, I was going to circle back to it. The reason why Dale got cut back so much is he was worried of being typecast.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, and so they heavily cut down his role so that way he didn't have to worry about it. But I mean, in the interview, when he gets to the return, he said he was having a meeting with Lynch, and Lynch was like, yeah, well, we found a way back to Twin Peaks. And he's like, David, I never left.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, man, I love the movie. Yes, tonally, it's completely different from the show, but I mean, it's great. Everything with this universe is fantastic.
Yeah. Not for first timers. If you're
no, definitely not.
Yeah, no. You gotta see the show first. There's no way around it. This isn't one of those prequels you can just jump in first.
Yeah, I would definitely say watch the show first, and maybe have at least one Lynch movie under your belt beforehand. That way you kind of know. I would say Mulholland. I think Mulholland Drive is a good first timer. First time Lynch film to have under your belt going into Twin Peaks.
It's a lot of homework.
Even though that movie came out way before Twin Peaks, or way after Twin Peaks.
We're talking like 30 hours of viewing before you can watch this movie. That's insane. That's so much homework. But I guess whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but if they love it, they'll do the work.
That's true. It's not work if you
Well, buddy, what are we going to talk about next week?
That's a good question. I am looking at my stuff, and I'm trying to take into account what we've done before, right? So this film, for instance, is a certain type of film. So that eliminates some of the films that I have on my list, because I don't want to do some, films that require work back to back. So yeah. So I think next week, we are going to discuss a film that I'm smiling from ear to ear because I can't wait. Because I love it. And we might have, at the time, this guy was not very well known. Neither of them were, as a matter of fact. So next week we're discussing a film written by Taylor Sheridan and directed by Denis Villeneuve. We are talking Sicario next week.
Let's go.
So Taylor Sheridan, of course, has become almost a household name with Yellowstone. But I knew him with Sicario, Hell or High Water, Wind River. I mean, those films are incredible. The American Frontier trilogy, I think, is what he calls it.
Yes, yeah.
And man, Sicario is just so good. And Denis Villeneuve, of course, is, he's Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah, it's yeah. If people didn't know from our Prisoners episode, that's the only movie we've done of his so far, right?
I think so.
Yeah, we haven't done Dune yet, which that would be another episode that would take time and work. I don't think we've done.
I'm not reading for it.
I don't think we've done Blade Runner yet.
No,
because we can't do 2049 until we do Blade Runner.
Might be a two-parter down the road.
Yeah. I'm excited, man. As we talked about in our Hell or High Water episode, I mean, I think Taylor Sheridan is a fantastic writer. I haven't started watching Yellowstone, but I want to. It's on my wish list with the prequel shows as well. Same for Mayor of Easttown. Or is it Mayor of Easttown or Mayor of...
Did he
the one with Jeremy Renner?
I don't know.
I could have sworn he did. Or at least he produces it.
Oh, no, that's a different one with Jeremy Renner. Mayor of Easttown is with Kate Winslet.
Mayor of Kingstown is Jeremy Renner.
Oh, Kingston. I see. Okay.
Right. Cool.
Right.
Yeah, and I think Taylor Sheridan's also now producing another show for Paramount Plus called I don't even know. I just know it's got Dennis Quaid in it.
Okay. I like Dennis Quaid. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Taylor Sheridan. And I, of course, love Denis Villeneuve. And Sicario is just a knockout. It's so good. And a lot of cool things, a lot of cool methods with building tension. So we'll talk about that next week. It's a very unique film to study tension. So get ready for that.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited.
Cool. Me too.
Well, everyone, we hoped you enjoyed the special Wednesday episode of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with me, and we will see you next week for Sicario.
See you in 25 years.